I would love to invite Harrison to join me to have a campfire conversation. Hi, Harrison.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. How is the weather there?
It's very cold, but luckily I have a nice campfire.
I brought my water with me.
I have mine as well.
Cool. Awesome. Hey, thank you for joining me. I think many people join this event to hear our conversation about what is a compound AI system, and what are we doing in this space. To begin with, before we dive into that topic, I would like to ask you one question, because this space is so fast moving. What are the most interesting apps built with LangChain, or I can talk about built with Fireworks recently?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've really become interested in more kind of like agentic types of applications, which we'll talk about compound AI systems. I think they go hand in hand. And so, we did a case study with Elastic recently when they were building kind of like one of their assistants on top of LangGraph, actually, which is one of our newer frameworks for building these agentic or compound AI systems. And I really like that because it does a few different things. It calls into a bunch of different models. It calls into different tools. It writes different queries. And so I think it's in production from a real it's from a public company. And I think like there's been a lot of talk about demos and going prototype to production. And I think like I really like that because I think it's a good example of that. One, my other favorite one, which is a little bit different, so they don't actually use LangChain, but they use LangSmith, which does a lot of testing and observability specifically for these more agentic compound systems, is Dot from New Computer. So they have a really cool app that they just came out of. They came out of stealth like a month or so ago. And it's basically an assistant that you talk to, and the big thing is personalized memory, so it remembers things about you. And so there's a lot of like RAG going on. They do a lot of function calling, compound AI type things. And again, they don't use LangChain. Maybe they use Fireworks, but they use LangSmith. So I like to give that as an example as well. What are your favorite ones?
Yeah, I have several ones, but I mean, Elastic using LangGraph is a big deal. I believe they have pretty complicated use case, and that's awesome to know. From my side, we work with a lot of startups, but also enterprises. A few ones that stand out, they're very interesting. They're pushing the boundaries of this innovation in application space. I think multi-on is interesting. This automatic agent for taking actions on the web. Yeah. So they can book trips, book rides, and order food. And I tend to be lazy, and I hope those, and eventually I don't need to do this groundwork. The other one is called Salient. They're very interesting. They basically make phone calls for their customers. For example, their car loaners, they need to get payment from early delinquent customers, and they just kind of make this automated phone call, and you don't have to kind of hire people to do that. Cursor is another one. They build a new IDE for software development with really fast code generation and online code review, because we are all software developers, and sometimes code review can take a long time because it kind of is put in a queue, and it just slow down the process. And the Cursor have like just a nonstop online code review. While you write a code, it give you the review. Superhuman is also interesting. Superhuman is an email management platform. I was kind of planning a trip. We can talk about that later. Well, I was planning a trip with my daughter. She just graduated from high school. And Superhuman have this interesting feature. Basically, you can ask anything about your inbox without remembering any details. And it can also take actions for you. So I think across the board, I just see an explosion of creativity. I know we're just at the beginning of this innovation cycle, and very love to kind of exchange more notes with you because you see a lot.
No, I mean, I'd echo. I think it's super early on in this cycle, and I think like for a lot of this stuff, like it builds on top of all like the function calling that you guys. So I'm curious about that as well. Like, have the use cases that you've seen people go into changed since you started bringing these function calling models to market?
So, so I think the market is interesting. I think we have a pretty broad design space.
Yeah.
In the market. Actually, I think we can kind of we represent different points in the design space. I think the two big design options are imperative system building versus declarative. Imperative is to tell the computer or system what to do, like explicit chaining to offer maximum amount of control, because software engineer will all want to control things and make things deterministic. This existed before. For example, in the big data era, Airflow for DAG processing is very popular. And the other spectrum is declarative, is to tell the system what we want to get out of it. And it can use a simple API to dynamic generate workflow with a complex system behind the API. A good example in the past is SQL, is in the database area, SQL as the query language. And then database engine has complex logic to do the processing behind the scene. So I feel like if we map the big data design space to AI, we probably has a like corresponding infrastructural system in place already. I feel kind of LangGraph is the kind of representative direction to give software engineer the max amount of control. Fireworks, we want to leverage function calling to work with individual models across modality we provide and tap into those APIs, but really just surface a very simple user interface. But it's interesting, in the big data world, the orchestration layer works perfectly with databases. I just feel like it's a very natural stacking of systems like LangChain. Harrison, you're doing a great job there. Integrate with the systems that provide a simple API to decompose workflow. So I think that these two options will coexist in the future.
100%. I mean, yeah, most of the things that people build with LangGraph use function calling in some form or another, just as, probably a lot of Airflow, paths wrote to SQL databases under the hood in a particular step or something like that. And so, yeah, I mean, the function callings in particular has been like, I think we get asked a bunch about like open source models. And I think one of the things that I always say around why adoption I don't think is quite there is because it doesn't have like native built-in kind of like function calling support, at least for the open weights. But like those are part of the API that like you all are exposing, and I think that makes a lot of the decision making for LangGraph type applications a lot easier. And so yeah, I mean it's a seamless pairing.
Yeah, so I want to dive a little bit more into that, because we have been working on function calling for quite a while, starting from end of last year. So we roll out multiple versions of function calling model, and the quality is really important. And you are completely right. That space hasn't taken off because the quality of the model to generate a good plan and be able to execute on that plan is not good before. And we spend a lot of effort to build a high quality function calling model. I think we are very optimistic about that direction. But speaking about this space, what do you think are the fundamental building blocks to deliver an overall high quality system?
Also one quick point on the function calling thing, like so yeah, you guys launched something end of last year, early this year. that's still like 9 months after OpenAI or something like that. And I actually think it's like, if I think you guys might have launched something even before Anthropic or something, like even before Google. And so I think there was this period of time where OpenAI had like close to a year where no one else had function calling. And to me, that's like insane, because it's so like, if we talk about building blocks, like I think being able to reliably output structured things and determine what actions to take is absolutely one of them. So like when we see people building applications with LangGraph, there's oftentimes some sort of orchestration layer, and that can be LangGraph, that can be another open source project, that can be your own internal thing. There's obviously the language models that you need. A big part of that is using them for the reasoning step to do function calling. So like most of our LangGraph examples use function calling. And so those types of language models that do function calling are a big part of those systems. There's generally some like retrieval component, like bringing other sources of data in. This could be like if this could be some sort of database that you host with some sort of vector index, either a vector native database or like Elastic, which is built in, or sorry, an existing database like Elastic, which is built in this capability. We're seeing, like, in terms of like other tools, like a lot of what LangGraph is connecting like LLMs to other sources of data and computation, right? So there's like private data, which you maybe index with an embedding model, and then store in a database. There's maybe public data. So we see a lot of search tools, Tavili, U.com. They all have like search APIs. Like those are a big component. And code interpreters are another popular tool. So there's e2b.dev, which has some code interpreter sandboxes. I think Azure launched something. But the majority of the tools we actually see people defining themselves. So like LangChain has like 150 off-the-shelf tools, but like most of the tools that are used in production are user-defined. And I think that totally makes sense, because you're connecting the LLMs to your data and your APIs. And so you're going to want to write your own tools. So I'd say, and then actually the last thing that I'll just add on, generally with all these systems, especially when there's these compound AI systems, they have multiple steps, like observability is super important. And so LangGraph integrates seamlessly with LangSmith, which shamelessly is our other product. But I think generally we see people have some sort of observability solution. And so, I'd go orchestration, LLM, database, tools, observability. Did I miss anything? What do you think?
No, I'm a big fan of what you're building. And I would say you're absolutely right. So kind of, it took us some time to get to really high quality function calling model. But also we're not sure actually if function calling is the right API or right surface area.
Why not?
Initially, because last year it was very early. We didn't get enough signal from developers. That's what they need. And why don't we just use this imperative workflow constructs to build everything out? Until we talk with a few companies, and the feedback is interesting. We're like, hey, you can use our individual models, but the barrier is they were using OpenAI's function calling, and it generates dynamic graph, and they don't need to, and the product is fast moving, so they don't want to spend time to figure out how to set up things properly and maintain it, scaling it. So that gave us a very interesting insights. Oh, that is a promising direction that will have a lot of adoption base. So that's why we started working on this direction. And in terms of adoption, one of our customer, Superhuman, they actually use our compound AI system, the Firewall's compound AI system, starting from function calling. It solved a very practical problem. That practical problem is actually I have that need. My daughter just graduated from high school, and we are planning a big trip to visit Asia, many cities and countries. So she started planning a while ago, sent me a lot of itineraries. She has booked the flight and so on. And then recently I need to dive into solidify the plan more. But then I need to go into my inbox and sift through all these emails and retrieve that, and then figure out the dates, and then go to recommendation services all across the board, and to look at action, what things to do, where to eat, and make reservations on. So it's a lot of tedious work and hectic work. I wish there is a automated system that can, I can just tell it what I want to do, and it will do that for me. And so Superhuman, interestingly, they roll out a new product called Ask AI. Their customer just simply ask questions without needing to remember who is the sender, what is a keyword to guess, or scan through messages. Ask AI use Fireworks function calling model to interact with search, calendar tools, prompt large language model to summarization, Q&A, and generate rapid response. So that's just one step towards the dream I have. But we see a lot of adoptions of this direction. Yeah, so I think we're still at early stage of growing into those directions. So, but super exciting.
Yeah. For the trip, I tried it with a company yesterday, Woven. They're a startup. They're doing like the trip planning stuff. So they don't. I don't think they integrate with your email yet. But
Okay.
like for like this is maybe an open call. Like I just went to the trip to Copenhagen, and I wish I had kind of like more an easier way to explore what to do there. And so I actually think just because you were talking about trips, this is another common theme of what we see people doing is like, you have search of the old era where maybe you put in a keyword and you can add filters and manually add things. But we see people building like new types of search as like a concierge experience where you can chat with it. And it's like, what about this restaurant? And you're like, oh no, that's a little bit too expensive. Like, give me something else. And you don't have to like, fiddle around with manual filters and figure all that out, but this is concierge search experience. And I think that's another really common kind of like theme of experiences that we're seeing being enabled.
Yeah, definitely. Again, this is just a starting point. There will be so many.
Yeah.
I expect there are so many creative ideas that people can test and try. Harrison, I want to move to a few hot take questions. Are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
So I think recently we have seen, especially this year, have been the implosion of several single model AI companies. What do you think is the reason behind that?
What do I think is the reason behind that? I think it's a super competitive and fast moving space. And I think the teams that are succeeding are moving really, really fast. And ship a lot. I think OpenAI in 2023 was a great example of this. I think Anthropic recently has been a great example of this. You guys ship really, really fast. Google has actually shipped pretty fast as well, and they have some interesting and distinctive features. And so I think if you don't ship things, it's not going to be good. And so I think if you look at a few of the implosions recently, I'd argue that they didn't ship a whole lot and they didn't ship a whole lot very quickly. And so I'd probably point to that as a common denominator.
Yeah, you guys ship super fast too. I don't know if you ever sleep.
You have to.
I completely agree with you. Like the competition is so stark here. Every week is there a new model released, beating many others in some aspect of the benchmark. So I would say probably the fundamental reason is really about how fast things depreciate in this model building space.
How do you like try to safeguard against that? Because you guys are hosting the models, right? We have it a bit easier. We just integrate with you and then we get all these models for free. You guys do all the hard work. So how do you think about that depreciation of models?
Yeah, so we stay on top of the best models across the world, right? So a lot of open source models are really converging in terms of quality to closed source models. And also we also host some of the proprietary model. We have more model builders want to reach out to want to partner with us to surface their models. So that's how we stay on top of that. But in terms of the model depreciation, it's very interesting. I think it's very hard to hard to operate as a model builder. One is their model value. Because of the competition with each other, their new innovation, they push out their new model and they quickly depreciate if they don't stay in the top 3 or top 2. And Llama 3, Llama Meta threw out the curveball, and Llama significantly accelerate this depreciation. And second, they have to acquire a lot of GPUs. And hardware is also depreciating very fast because hardware vendor usually used to release a new SKU every few years. Now they release new SKU every year. So I think there's enormous amount of pressure for them to perform. And also from the investors, they either grow fast or fail fast. I think that's a very, very competitive space to operate.